Hannah. Race car. Nisio. Isin. Palindrome is a sequence of characters that reads the same forward as it does backward. Japanese literature reads right to left, while English texts go left to right. Different arrangements, but both are still capable of conveying similar information nonetheless. Now, why is that the case? Well, you see, I'm not Michael, so I don't have the answers to that. But at the very least, even I can tell that language is a highly intricate system for us to communicate. Syntax and morphology, semantics and pragmatics, phonetics and phonology. Amongst a plethora of different media we consume every day, literature is the most ostensibly simple one out of all of them, lacking the visual information of reading a graphic novel, the prosody of listening to an audiobook, or the full-on magical audio-visual spectacle of watching cinema. Texts are merely a sequence of words that are arranged all pretty. But its elusive simplicity, in a way, also gives off its own charm. Literature itself comes in a lot of different shapes and forms, such as plays, proses, and poems. But I'm too much of a peasant to even dare and discuss those media, so let's discuss light novels instead. First, let's establish what a light novel exactly is. To give some context, light novel is an evolution of pulp magazine, which, as the name implies, is a magazine made out of pulp. In the hierarchy of papermaking, pulp is historically considered to be a bottom-tier product when compared to the higher echelons of glossies and slicks. And since light novels are printed in pulp, it implicitly suggests that the contents of light novels are generally not regarded too highly. Not high enough to receive the premium glossy treatment, at least, which is more costly to mass produce. On the flip side, because of the cheap production, the product itself is thus also sold for cheap. Hence, virtually anyone can afford it, including kids and youths in general, which partially explains its predominantly young adult demographic. But the cheap production cost also means that the product isn't meant to last. It's literally designed to be disposable. Its short shelf life also partly explains the high turnover rate of LNs, where many titles come and go every year. To illustrate this, Kazuma Kamachi, the author most known for the series A Certain Magical Index, has almost always been working on at least 4 different series simultaneously. What's even more impressive is how he went on a 24-month-long streak of outputting at least 1 novel a month. For context, on average, there's usually a 4 to 9 month-long gap between when each volume of a series is published. Granted, this is an extreme example and is in no way, shape, or form the norm, but it goes to show how ruthless and cutthroat the industry can be, not too far off from the manga industry. Now, having said all of this, it still doesn't exactly narrow down what a light novel is, now does it? So to spare you from the boring technicalities of what exactly constitutes a light novel, my personal working definition for it is a short novel, around say 150 to 250 pages, that has or has a high probability of having an anime/manga adaptation. Another angle of looking at it is that the difference between a regular novel and a light novel is the same difference that separates a comic book from a manga, and cartoons from anime. It's all essentially branding. While the actual differences may be superficial, at the end of the day, it's still a difference nonetheless. And frankly, it's a conversation for another day. With that said, the difference between a light novel and manga/anime is more self-evident. Unlike the latter two, light novels make no use of visuals when telling a narrative. I mean, sure, there are vibrant illustrations attached to most light novels, but they're used as a mere supplement to the story, rather than being used as the primary means of conveying information. If we're talking coffee, then I'd say anime is a caramel macchiato, while light novel is your regular old plain pour-over. And I guess manga would be cappuccino. There's a lot of ingredients that make up a caramel macchiato. The coffee itself, the milk, and all of these letters that make up the quote-unquote caramel syrup, amongst other things. Comparably, there's a lot of components that make up an anime. Dialogues,
That boo-boo from my choo-choo's just the beginning.
character design, voice acting, and whatnot. Plain black coffee, on the other hand, only contains the coffee itself. Then I guess water as well, but regardless, it's analogous to how light novels only simply contain words, which makes it easier for the reader to pick out the subtleties that are embedded between the lines. In terms of coffee, you'd have an easier time discerning the subtle notes that are unique to each coffee bean when it's served plain, rather than when it's mixed in with a lot of other ingredients. By that same token, it's easier to figure out the subtleties of a character's state of mind through explicit words, rather than equivocal visuals. And to further build upon the coffee metaphor, you'd still find all of these beverages served in the same coffee shop, just like how these different media are often run by the same parent company, namely, these ones. Now, it's commonplace for a light novel to eventually receive either a manga or anime adaptation, and most of the time, even both. Some movies are even adapted into light novels. It's all essentially a strategy to cross-promote franchises across different media. What do I mean by this? Well, it's essentially just expanding their brand. If you see your favorite light novel getting an anime adaptation, then you'd likely come check the anime out when it starts airing. And on the flip side, the anime may act as the gateway to the franchise for others, and if they like it enough, they might even pick up the source material. In Japan especially, whenever a light novel/manga receives an anime adaptation, bookstores would dedicate entire sections just for the franchise in an attempt to further boost sales. Or so I've heard, I don't actually live in Japan. But this begs the question, if a light novel inevitably gets an anime adaptation anyway, then why bother with a light novel in the first place? And that's a fair sentiment. So to answer that, just imagine the bragging rights you get to earn.
Oh, what's that? You read the manga? Well, I read the original online web novel, in Japanese, of course.
On a more serious note, there is a long list of anime that ends up being stuck in purgatory, waiting for the announcement of the next season that may or may not even come. In this case, a lot of fans are left wondering if the series would ever get a sequel in the first place. And to quench their thirst for more, picking up the original source material is a solution. Another reason for which you might want to pick up a light novel is, as I've hinted at before, it usually does a more thorough job in portraying a character's thought process, simply by virtue of just elaborating more. In Bakemonogatari, you can see through this scene that Shinjogahara instinctively puts up her guard at the sight of Oshino. There's a lot of implied reasons for her to do so. I mean, just the shock from seeing the contrast between how Oshino usually looks to how he is portrayed here is a good shout. But on the light novel, Nishio Isin elucidated that Shinjogahara evoked that specific reaction because of the uncanny resemblance between Oshino and the cult leader who attempted to sexually abuse her. While it's not impossible to discern that from mere visuals, it's much easier to process when it's explicitly stated, just like how it's easier to tell that the barista used premium single-source beans, rather than the more value-oriented commercial ones you find in your local shop, when it's not masked by the overwhelming flavor of artificial caramel. Lastly, the thing that I appreciate the most from light novels is how personal of a project it feels. Unlike an anime, where you have a lot of different people working on different things, like sound designer sound designing, voice actor voice acting, and animators animating, light novel is essentially a one-man show. Besides the editor and illustrator, of course. And because there's less middleman between the original author and us, the reader, what you see is exactly how the author envisioned it to be, for the most part. You see, there's a big caveat here that I presume applies to most of us, and it has a little something to do with the Pandora's box of translation. It's almost common knowledge now that it's basically impossible to give a one-to-one translation, since different languages have different grammar. Now, I don't speak a lick of Japanese, but after years of watching anime, an example I can give is Oni-chan daisuki! It's usually translated to something along the lines of
I love you, big bro.
But if translated word by word, it would be something like big brother, big like. A stupid example, I know, but this highlights the sheer absurdity of trying to literally translate things word by word. In a pinch, you'd still probably be able to converse with this clumsy translation, but that's where conversational and actual fluency greatly differs. You don't necessarily need proper grammar to understand someone else's point.
Go straight and turn right. Go, go, go. Go your way. Believe yourself.
But that isn't the case when trying to appreciate a work of art. Not only that, but some phrases just simply don't have a perfect translation, like yoroshiku onegaishimasu, for example. And as if that's not convoluted enough, there's also the fact that culture and language are heavily intertwined. This can manifest in different ways, of course, such as the whole concept of accents and dialects, but to give a more general example, the honorific system used in the Japanese language would suffice to illustrate this. You can get a feel of how social hierarchy plays a big role in Japanese culture through its language alone. In the past, Japan implemented a strict caste system, where people refer to others differently depending on where they stand in the social ladder relative to others. But while the system has long since been abolished, old habits die hard, and its influence on shaping the language is still observable today. A simple example is how you add
Senpai.
at the end of someone's name to refer to your senior, who in a sense is socially above you. Kind of. This all just further adds to the challenges translators face within their line of work. And while these particular issues are also present in the realm of anime and manga, the influence of translators is way more profound in light novels because anime and manga don't solely rely on its text to convey information. But before I go any further, let me ask you this. What is the purpose of translating literature? Now, I'd assume most of you probably answer with something along the lines of, to understand and appreciate artworks from different cultures. Which, while I joke, is also my personal answer. But this is only from our perspective, the consumers. You see, there's a somewhat recent controversy surrounding translation within the light novel community. Essentially, Seven Seas Entertainment, a well-known light novel licensor, came under fire for significantly altering some of the contents in their translation. Most notably, some parts of Volume 7 of Classroom of the Elite, some parts of Volume 1 of I'm in Love with the Villainess, as well as completely revising some of Mushoku Tensei's explicit scenes, amongst other things. But before I go into whether these are all necessarily a wrong thing to do or not, let's discuss why this all might have happened in the first place. From the licensor side, a big reason to translate a piece of literature is to be able to penetrate a different market with a different demographic, one that may not necessarily be familiar with the cultural context of its origins. If a work is written in Japanese, then you'd restrict your audience to only those who can read the language. Whereas, if you try to adapt it to other languages, then you'd be able to widen the range of your market. Or, in other words, ka-ching! And while it's not necessarily mutually exclusive with our standpoint here, there are some conflicts of interest. On one hand, translators would of course want to follow the original text to convey the spirit of what is being said by the author. But for a variety of reasons, it isn't as straightforward as that. To go back to the example I gave, since different languages have different grammar, the translator might need to alter the overall structure to improve the overall readability of the text. As such, creative liberties are required when trying to give a proper translation. This adds a layer of complexity in that, while some of these changes may seem merely cosmetic at first glance, they have the potential to snowball to greater effects. In the end, it all eventually boils down to a judgment call in which the translator crew must decide, which in turn introduces a middleman. Now let me highlight the phrase translator crew here, and I'll go into why that's so important later on. While this all may explain some degree of alteration, it's all irrelevant in the case of Mushoku Tensei's translation. You see, in the original Japanese text, specifically the 3rd chapter of Volume 2, there's a scene where Rudeus just flat out groped and tried to remove Eris's underwear. But in the licensed English translation, the scene was replaced with Rudeus trying to pull Eris's shirt over her belly to prevent her from catching a cold. This isn't the case of trying to make things more comprehensible anymore. It's a flat-out distortion of Rudeus' characterization. The translator crew made a conscious editorial decision for this to happen. If this is a one-off thing for this specific series and this specific volume, then sure, I guess. But this isn't even the case. More recently, 7 Seas Entertainment again came under fire for essentially abridging some of I'm in Love with the Villainess' contents to the point where it alters the conveyed emotion of a prominent character. In response to the most recent episode regarding I'm in Love with the Villainess' translation, 7 Seas Entertainment gave out this statement.
Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Those portions of the text were removed during the editorial process at the time, but we have since changed how we edit these books to make sure important lines are not lost. We'll be revising the ebook within the next few weeks to add the cut portions back into the book, and the revision will also be reflected in all future printings of the paperback.
Now, what this implies is that 7 Seas Entertainment has, or at least had, an editorial direction that they were aiming for in their translation. As for what exactly that entails, I'm not sure. But what probably happened is that they just simply didn't foresee the backlash that was brought upon by their own decisions. And while it's nice of them to put out a revision, a little bit of transparency really goes a long way in developing a sense of trust with us, the consumers. It'd be nice to know what their previous editorial process actually entails and how it exactly differs to how they do things now. As things stand, all they did was essentially promise to not do it again because they got caught. But for now, I'll take their word for it and hope things work out for the better moving forward. Now let me go back to why I stressed the use of the phrase translator crew. You see, if you go and pick up any translated light novel, you'd notice that there's often only a single name credited with the translation work. But in actuality, the translator also works closely with their own editor and higher-ups. Now, what does this imply exactly? It means that personal accountability of editorial decisions is really muddled and isn't clear-cut at all. The editor may have executive powers that overrides the translator's own work, which is exactly what happened in Mushoku Tensei's case, according to the accredited translator. With this in mind, I sincerely implore everyone to not jump to conclusions prematurely. And also, let me emphasize that I can only comment on specific instances and not how the localization industry works as a whole. I am not a journalist, nor a financial advisor. And clearly, there's more to it than what's made public. If only there were an independent group of translators who's not bound to any corporate strings. Fan translators. Oh my. That's another giant Pandora's box you got there. So huge it makes me blush. Yeah, honestly, after carefully treading through the maze of eggshells just now, I'm just bringing this up upon myself at this point. But it is something that does need acknowledging, so I'll comment on it a bit further. In brief, while fan translations may indeed be free from corporate strings, they aren't entirely divorced from clashes in authority either. If you follow the manga scanlation community, then you'd know that even independent translators have their own drama and politics to deal with, from power-tripping personnels to scanlators stealing other scanlations. And this is all besides the argument that fan translations are inherently less polished when compared to official releases. So to end off, if any of you are interested in picking up a light novel after all of this, and just would like to know where to start, then from the bottom of my heart, I truly believe that you have the capacity to decide for yourself. You got this! But if you still insist, then I suppose I can list off what I've been reading recently in the description down below. And with that, folks, thank you all for watching, and see you next time. And that's... fuck. Oni-chan daisuki! Yeah, fuck me dead. What the fuck did I just say?